Thanks for coming. Please be seated. Guys, thanks for the warm welcome. It's great to be here in Memphis, Tennessee. What a fabulous city you got. One of our panelists here was saying that he got up at 4:30 this morning trying to prepare some remarks for today, some interesting thoughts about Social Security. And I said, I'm glad it wasn't you I heard at 4:30. Evidently there's a basketball tournament here, and some of the victorious fans were pleased with the results yesterday. But I'm honored to be here. Memphis is a fabulous place. I wish Laura were with me today. She is she's doing great, by the way. She's obviously a patient woman to be married to me. She's a wonderful mom, a fantastic wife, and she's doing a whale of a job as our country's first lady, and I'm really proud of her. We're here to talk about Social Security. I've got some other things on my mind I want to share with you. Before we talk about anything, I do want to thank Congressman Harold Ford for being here. I'm honored you're here, Congressman. I appreciate your service to this great city. Just about every time I see him, he says to me, you need to get over to Memphis. We've got a great town full of fantastic people. And Congressman, I'm honored you're here. Mayor A.C. Wharton, thank you for being here. I appreciate you coming. Thank you, sir. Got a lot of friends here. I see the sheriff, he's here. It's always important to say hello to the high sheriff. Bishop G.E. Patterson is here. I'm honored you're here, Bishop Patterson. Thank you for coming. I want to thank a lot of the other friends of mine and the clergy who are here. You know, when we talk about the role of religion in society, it's always important to emphasize that one of the things that makes us great is that we separate the church and the state, that you're equally American if you choose to worship or not worship. You're equally American if you're a Christian, Jew, Muslim, or Sikh, whatever you choose to do. But one of the things I think is important is to include faith-based programs in the healing of hearts so that America can be a hopeful place. I do not fear the influence of faith in our society. I welcome faith. And over the next 4 years, we'll continue to work with generals and colonels and sergeants and privates in the Army of Compassion to help change our country one heart and one soul at a time. If you want to serve America, feed the hungry, find shelter for the homeless. If you want to do something patriotic, mentor a child, teach him or her how to read. If you want to make America a better place, put your arm around somebody who hurts and says, I love you, brother, or I love you, sister, and I'm here to help you. Now, America's great strength is the hearts and soul of our citizens, and we must continue to rally that great strength to make America a better place. I do want to talk a little bit about foreign policy. For the youngsters here, I hope you pay attention to what you're seeing. What you're seeing is an amazing moment in the history of freedom. Millions of people, because we acted to defend ourselves, we liberated Afghanistan from the Taliban, and millions of people voted in a presidential election. I met with one of the ministers, a female minister from Afghanistan the other day. She came into the Oval Office. She said she was looking forward to this moment to see me and Laura so that she could share with me her great gratitude about the fact that she can live in a free society. And I said to her, I'm going to be traveling the country, and I'm going to share your thanks with the American people. So on behalf of this minister, this woman serving in the cabinet, this person who loves freedom, this person who has a chance to realize her dreams, she says thanks. Thanks to the millions who now live in a free society. I believe there will be a Palestinian democracy living side by side with Israel in peace. I believe that the actions taken by millions of Iraqi citizens in the face of incredible terrorist threats sent a clear signal to people around the world that freedom is a beautiful thing. The reason I bring this up is I want everybody to understand that we'll defend our security, we'll utilize our great military and our intelligence gathering capabilities to defend our country. And we're united in the United States, with the United States Congress in this objective. All of us in Washington understand that we have a solemn duty to protect our country, but in the long run, the way to defeat the ideologues of hate is to spread freedom and democracy. Freedom is moving around the world. Deep in everybody's soul is the great desire to live in freedom. And the United States of America, working with friends and allies, must use our influence to continue the march of freedom for the sake of peace for generations to come. Some good news in the economy. Last week, we added 262,000 new jobs. Last month, there are more people working in America than ever before in our nation's history. But there's more work to do. I gave a speech in Columbus, Ohio on Wednesday. I said, you know, I reminded the folks that when I first got into office, I sent an energy plan to the United States Congress. I was concerned then, like I am concerned now, about high gasoline prices, about our dependency upon foreign sources of energy. Congress has been debating this issue now for 4 years. It's time to stop the rhetoric and stop the debate and get an energy plan to my desk that will encourage conservation, that will encourage renewable sources of energy, that will modernize the electricity grid, that will allow us to explore for oil and gas in environmentally friendly ways in the United States, that will make us less dependent on foreign sources of energy. All right, here we go. But the main reason I've asked you to come and asked our panelists to appear with me is because I want to talk about Social Security. First of all, let me tell you, I understand that for years, Social Security was the third rail of American politics. That meant if you grabbed a hold of it, you weren't going to do well politically. In other words, if you talked about it, people would then say, well, really what he's going to do, he's going to take away the checks of our seniors. But you'll hear me describe the fact that I believe the system needs to be reformed, and I'll tell you why. And I believe political people, when they see a problem, have a duty to address that problem and not to pass that problem on to future presidents and future Congress. I ran for office to solve problems. Some in Congress say, I wish you hadn't brought up the issue. It may cause us to make a tough vote. Others in Congress have said, well, we really don't have a problem. That's how democracy works. There's differences of opinion. And I've got mine, and I'm going to continue traveling our country until it becomes abundantly clear to the American people we have a problem, and it's abundantly clear to those who will receive Social Security check that nothing's going to change. So I want to start by saying to the seniors here in Tennessee and folks listening on your television set that for those of you who are receiving a check today, and for those of you like me near retirement, nothing is going to change for you. You will get your check. I don't care what the TV ads say. I don't care what the propagandists say. You're going to get your check. It's important for people to understand that, because I fully understand a lot of people depend solely on their Social Security check for retirement. I know that. When I was the governor of Texas, I knew that. And I know that as the president of the United States. A lot of people are depending upon the check, and the Social Security system is working for them. There is a safety net. The problem is that the safety net's got a hole in it for younger Americans. The safety net's secure for older Americans. Franklin Roosevelt did a good thing when he set up Social Security. It has worked. And so the discussion today is not to get rid of Social Security. The discussion today is to build on what Franklin Roosevelt put in place, to understand that things have changed since his presidency. You see, Social Security worked for years because there were a lot of workers putting money into the system through their payroll taxes to pay for a limited number of beneficiaries. Matter of fact, in 1950, there were 16 workers per beneficiary. And the system works when it's that way. For example, you'll see that chart for somebody who's making $14,200 in benefits on an annual basis. That means the worker would pay $900 to help that one person. Today, there's only 3.3 workers putting into the system. In other words, we got fewer workers paying per beneficiary. That obviously means costs are going up, and particularly given this fact, baby boomers like me are getting ready to retire. Mine happens to be, and my retirement age comes up in 2008, which is quite convenient. I'll be 62 years old in 2008, and there's a lot like me, and there's more coming, and we're living longer than people during Franklin Roosevelt's time and during the 50s, and we've been promised greater benefits than the previous generations. So think about this: fewer workers paying into the system, 3.3 per beneficiary now, soon to be 2 workers per beneficiary, paying for a lot of baby boomers like me who've been promised greater benefits, and we're living longer. And that's the math. That's why I say there's a hole in the safety net. And that hole exists for the people coming up, because that system can't sustain itself. If you look at this chart over here, you'll see that in 2018, more money is going out of the system than coming in. More money in 2020. 2029, $200 billion a year will be going out of the system than coming in. More money in 37 will be coming out of the system. Coming every year, it gets worse and worse and worse, because there are baby boomers like me, more of us than ever before, drawing larger benefits and living longer. So we have a problem for a younger generation. Imagine somebody who's looking at this chart. They're going to say, "What are you going to do about it, Mr. President? What are you going to do about it?" And so I stood up in front of the Congress and said, we have a problem. And I think I was the first president ever to say all options are on the table. I said there's been some interesting ideas. Congressman Tim Penny, when he was a Democrat congressman from Minnesota, put some interesting ideas on the table. President Clinton, my predecessor, put some interesting ideas on the table. Democrat Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan from New York put some interesting ideas on the table. I have an obligation to say to people from both parties, let's fix this permanently. Let's don't slap a Band-Aid on the problem. Let us fix it permanently, and all ideas, bring them forward, and I'm interested in listening. There will be no political retribution when you put an idea on the table. As a matter of fact, you will get kudos. In Washington, D.C., there's still partisan talk. There's still people saying, well, I'm not so sure I want to get involved. My call to people from both political parties is now's the time to put aside our political differences and focus on solving this problem for generations of Americans to come. I do want to talk about an interesting idea that I have discussed with others. I have an obligation to participate in the dialogue. I don't get to write the legislation, by the way. Members of the Senate and the House will write the legislation. But I've got some ideas that I'd like for people to consider, and one of them is to allow younger workers to take some of their own money and set it aside in a personal retirement account, a savings account. And let me tell you why I like the idea. Here's why I like the idea. First of all, we'll discuss, and Congressman Penny will discuss this, about the notion of compounding rate of interest. That means if you're able to get a reasonable rate of return on your money, that over time it grows exponentially. In other words, if you're able to set aside some of your own money in a conservative mix in stocks and bonds, you'll get a better rate of return on that money than you would on the rate of return that the government gets for you. And it's that difference that over time compounds. So take, for example, a person making $35,000 a year over his or her lifetime, and if he or she were allowed to set aside 4% of the payroll tax in a personal savings account, by the time he or she retired, there would be $250,000 as a part of the retirement system. That's what compounding rate of interest does. People say, well, I'm not so sure I know how to invest. You know, there's kind of this notion that there is an investor class in America. That sounds a little limited to me. Only a certain type of person can invest. I don't subscribe to that notion. I believe everybody should have the opportunity to invest, and I believe everybody can invest. Now, when you say personal account, you can't take the money and put it in the lottery. You got a lottery in Tennessee? Right down the road. Well, you can't do that. Matter of fact, there would be a prescribed set of types of stocks and bonds. Obviously, we're not going to let people take their money and gamble it out. And we've done this before. See, this isn't new ground. After all, a lot of people invest their own money in 401ks. There's an investor class growing way beyond the concepts of the investor class. In other words, defined contribution plans are spreading out all over America. People are used to this concept. Federal employees get to do this through the Federal Employee Thrift Savings Plan. In other words, the federal government has said to employees, hey, you get to invest some of your own money if you choose in a conservative mix of stocks and bonds. So as this concept has been around, this is interesting. This isn't something brand new. This is an idea that ought to happen for Social Security as well as other retirement, as it happened in other retirement funds. Thirdly, we want people owning something. I love the fact that more people now own their home than ever before in our nation's history. I like the fact when there's more entrepreneurs from all walks of life, people saying, I own my own business. That's the important part. How about letting people own a stake of the future of the country by having ownership in their own retirement plan? And that's what we're talking about, ownership. Finally, I like the idea of somebody being able to accumulate assets and pass it on to their heirs. Provides for stability in society. Now, ownership ought not to be limited. It ought to be spread around our society. And finally, there's a macroeconomic benefit when more people save, like they would be doing through their personal accounts. It provides more capital for investment. And capital is necessary for the expansion of small business. Capital helps fuel the entrepreneurial spirit of America. The more savings, the more capital, the more jobs. So this is an idea that I want Congress to take a look at. In the spirit of all ideas ought to be put on the table. I'm looking forward to the discussions with members of both political parties. I've got a lot of work to do in the meantime. I'm going to Louisiana after this. Next week I'll be traveling down to Florida, checking on the brother. And then I'm going to be going out. Then I'm going to be going out west, and I'm going to campaign for Social Security. Because as I told you earlier, we have a duty in Congress to do something about this before it becomes too late, before we saddle an entire generation with a problem we cannot solve. There you go. I want to thank Tim Penny for being here, elected to the United States Congress from Minnesota, knows the subject really well. Congressman, thanks for coming. I'm proud you're here. Thanks for joining us.
You bet. You bet. Mr. President, thank you first for putting this issue on top of the agenda, because it is an urgent issue and it's one that needs to be addressed sooner than later. Doing nothing is not an option. An economic advisor to a previous president once said, if something is unsustainable, eventually it'll stop. If something is unsustainable, eventually it will stop. And as you've demonstrated by this chart over here, the trend we're on with Social Security is unsustainable. And here's my concern. I voted for some Social Security payroll tax increases back in 1983 as a 30-year-old congressman, my very first year in Congress. And that's the way we've addressed this issue in the past when we've had a financial problem in Social Security. We've raised payroll taxes 24 times since this program was created. When it was first initiated, it was 2% of payroll on the first $3,000 of income. Today, it's almost 12.5% of payroll on up to $90,000 of income. So as you look at the trend lines here, where we have 3 workers for every retiree today, 2 workers for every retiree by the year 2030, what kind of a payroll tax burden is that going to place on the next generation of workers? As I told you in New Hampshire a couple weeks ago, if we could pick our own workers to support us in our retirement, then I would pick Jessica Simpson and Tiger Woods, because I'd be fine. But we don't have that luxury. We can't do that. And so we have to fix this system for the long term that deals with the long-term costs in the system. But also, this really is about our grandchildren. This is not about current seniors or those near retirement. The current system is what they've expected, and it's what we will provide for them. But for future generations, we need a better system. And let's look at what you would pay in taxes as a middle-income young person today, and we have one on the panel. Over her working life, she's going to pay somewhere between $160,000 and $200,000 in payroll taxes. But she'll have to live probably about 15 years just to get that money back. Now, if we were to take only 25% of the payroll taxes that she puts into the system and allow her to put that in a reasonable, balanced, conservative investment fund, similar to the kind of fund that we offer our federal workers, she would have an additional $150,000 to $200,000 or perhaps more in that fund over and above her Social Security benefit, and that money would be her own. That would be her money to keep. It wouldn't be money that would go into the program. If you die young in the current program, your benefits die with you. This gives you a benefit that's yours to own and control, and that's the difference. We need to help younger workers do better than simply keeping them on this trend path in the current system, because that basically means we're going to tell each succeeding generation of workers, keep paying more, but we're not going to give you more at the end of the day. And I'd like to have a system for younger workers that provides an opportunity for them to build a nest egg for themselves within the Social Security system, and that's really what this reform effort is all about.
Yeah, I want to thank Congressman Penny for sharing with us. As I mentioned, he is a Democrat, and but this is the spirit of Republicans and Democrats coming together to solve this problem that is needed. I mean, nothing's going to happen unless people from both political parties make the decision to join together and come up with a serious solution. And I want people to understand that. And I really want to thank Tim. He's been very active in this issue for a long period of time. He's occasionally able to make time to join the presidential road show to take this issue to the people. And he adds a lot of class to the road show, I want you to know. He's going down to Louisiana with me a little later on today. So thanks for being here, Tim. And we're going to start with Mary Hines. From where you live, Mary?
I live in Hickory Woods, Tennessee.
Hickory Woods, that's interesting.
Yeah, very small community. We're unincorporated, but
sounds like half the town came. How many people live there?
about 2,000 or 3,000.
Yeah, that's good. 4 times bigger than Crawford. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Are you receiving any Social Security?
Yes, I am. I've worked for 40 years as a secretary. My husband worked 40 years as for DuPont, and we're both drawing Social Security.
And is it important to you?
It is very important. It is part of our retirement plan.
Good. You worried about the reforms taking it away from you?
No. In fact, as we understand it, the reforms will not affect us. However, my children, like you, are in the baby boomer era when they retire. So this will affect them somewhat, but basically it will affect my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren. So
no, I appreciate it. Sorry to interrupt. Now that I have, I better say something. She has a vital point. There are a lot of grandmothers who are justifiably concerned about what Social Security means to their grandchildren. This is a generation where Social Security has worked. She and her husband are getting help from the Social Security system. After all, it's their money coming back to them. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard from people, once we have assured citizens that nothing changes for them, that what are you going to do about my grandchildren? This is a generational issue. It is an issue that is very important for members of Congress to understand, that a lot of grandparents care deeply about not only their own security, but once they're assured, they care deeply about the security of their grandchildren. I want to thank you for sharing that with us. Anything else you want to?
Well, I look at your chart over here, and I would like to thank those workers who are helping pay my Social Security.
That's right. That would be me, and a lot of other people. Good news is they're going to keep paying it, and you'll keep getting your check. Beverly Peterson is with us. She's got a very interesting story out. Ready to go? Look like you're ready to go.
I am. I wrote a letter to President Bush. I was concerned about the Social Security benefits. I had an incident happen to me 10 years ago. My husband passed away at the age of 49. I went to the Social Security office and was told that I would receive one benefit, and that was the death benefit of $250. I would receive no other benefit, and my two children who were in college at the time would not receive one. I was told that I was in the gray area. I was too young. Well, my husband had put into the Social Security system from the time he was 16 years old. I work full-time and part-time. I also put into the Social Security system. And when it comes time for me to retire, I will receive one or the other, whichever is greater of the two. The other one will be absorbed back into the system. We will never see it.
Yeah, let's thank you for sharing that with us. What Beverly is saying is that she was too young for the survivor benefits, and therefore the money that he put into the system, he being the husband, just poof, and there's nothing there. And because she has contributed to the Social Security system, when she retires, you'll get the benefits because of your check, but not because of your contributions, not because of your husband's contributions. Personal accounts. Think about what personal accounts would have done for Beverly. The husband works, puts money aside since 16 years old. What age was he when he passed away? 49 years old. So that's 33 years of compounding rate of interest. 33 years of that money set aside would grow. And when he passed away, there is an asset base for Beverly that she gets. And she can live on it. It'll help her transition to her days of retirement. In other words, that's one of the benefits of being able to accumulate your own assets that, as Tim said, you call your own. And when it's your own asset, you can pass it on to whomever you choose. The system is an important system today, but it has got holes in the safety net. And one of the holes in the safety net is a widow like Beverly did not have any assets when her husband passed away. Thank you for sharing that story with us. Pastor Andrew Jackson. Welcome, Pastor Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm delighted to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
We're glad you're here. You pastor what church, sir?
Faith Temple Ministries Church of God in Christ.
Right.
My bishop is Bishop G.E. Patterson and Bishop Jerry.
Patterson, fine man.
Bishop Jerry L. Maynard is my jurisdictional bishop.
Good. How's the congregation doing?
It's doing quite well. It's kind of like the city bus. Have some getting on and some getting off.
The difference in your case is the fare is free.
Yeah, that's true.
Tell me why you're here. Thanks for coming, and I'm honored. I want to hear your views on Social Security.
Well, I've been listening to this debate for some time, and first of all, I want to thank you for coming up with this idea. I just only wish perhaps 50 years ago when I started paying in Social Security, this concept would have been available. And of course, I would be able to draw a little more money than I'm drawing now. I've been drawing Social Security for the last 4 years. However, I'm not retired, still working. But I appreciate this concept. I have 18 grandchildren and 1 great-grandchild. I've been hearing, and even this morning coming here, I heard on the news that President Bush is trying to take away most of our Social Security. Of course, I know that's not what you're trying to do, but that's the myth that's circulating around.
That's called political propaganda.
Oh, okay, political propaganda.
That's what they said when I ran for president in 2000. I actually brought the issue up. They said, if he gets elected, he's going to take away your check. It didn't happen. Everybody got their checks. That's why propaganda, that's empty. That means it's
Empty.
Yeah, there's no truth to it. Go ahead.
Yes, well, as I said, I'm concerned about my grandchildren and great-grand. However, this won't affect me. I'll still continue to draw my Social Security until I die. And of course, if my wife go with me, that's the end of it. Unlike this plan, if my grandchildren, when they come along and they buy into this set aside, a small percentage of their Social Security, which they are paying anyway, would go into a personal or private account. When they cease to exist here, that private account will be passed on down to their generation, their children. So I think it's a great plan. I applaud you. I'm for it. I'm pushing it everywhere I go. I'm talking about it in my church. So my hat's off to you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Pastor.
Thank you so much.
See, here's what I like. I like the idea that the pastor is thinking about generations to come. And he said, I'm worried about my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, and I hope there's a system that develops that encourages asset accumulation so generation to generation assets can be passed on. When that hadn't happened for many in our history. No, that hadn't been the case throughout the history of the United States. We haven't encouraged asset formulation. There hasn't been wealth passed from one generation to the next in certain parts of our society. That's just the truth. And it seems like to me that it makes sense for us to come together and encourage a plan that does just that, that provides a continuity from one generation to the next when it comes to assets. We want people owning something. I don't care where they're from, what political party they associate with, what neighborhood they live in. The more people own something, the better off America is, and the ability to pass assets from one generation to the next is an important part of our legacy. Let me say one other thing, and then we got two other panelists here. This system, and I want to work with members of both parties to make sure this system takes care of our poorer workers. In other words, we can design the benefit structure for that which exists in a way that recognizes some people work all their life and will have to live below the poverty level upon retirement, and we don't want that in America. There are ways to make sure this system provides a solid safety net. Tim understands that. Harold understands that. All of us can work on this system. So I want to assure you, Pastor, that not only will the system encourage asset accumulation, but we want to make sure that whatever Social Security system exists, that when we permanently fix it, that people are given a true safety net, that the whole is fixed in the safety net, and that there is a safety net for retirees. Harry Summer. Harry, thanks for coming.
Thank you, Mr. President.
I understand you were a professor at one time.
Yes, sir. I was a professor of marketing for 35 years at the University of Memphis.
Oh, fantastic. Well, you're watching me market. That's what I'm doing right now.
Well, I have a few students in the audience as well, I'm sure. But it occurred to me, I'm worried about this young lady here, not myself. I know that I'll continue to get my Social Security till I die. And I'm a member of the Tennessee Consolidated Retirement System, which is a great system. and my wife will continue to draw my benefits till she dies. So that's great assurance for both of us. But I'm concerned about her. If the system is going to go broke, which I firmly believe it will, we'll be unable to sustain benefit levels, then she's in trouble because she doesn't have an asset base except what she can do on her own. Social Security will not provide that. This morning about 4:15 I woke up. I had talked about compound interest. And you can talk about it, but I decided I would give a concrete example. So I went to my computer and worked on it for about 30 minutes. Longer, I think, than that. But anyway.
See, I accused him of being one of the revelers outside my hotel room, but he assured me he was on his computer.
Well, it's a lot easier to do it on the computer than it is to do it by hand.
That's right.
So I decided that if a person who was 25 years old would have about 40 years in the system, if they put aside $10 a month every month for 40 years, 480 months, they would have, at a rate of 6% annually, compounded monthly, $24.48 that they could call their own. Now, a minimum wage worker puts in much more than that in the Social Security system every month, many times that amount. So that's money they can call their own. And so if she and her husband put into a private account money on their own, what they choose to do, optional, they don't have to, they choose to do that, then they will have a good nest egg, much more than $20,000 a year.
Yeah, see, that's 4 times the amount. In other words, the increase was 4 times the amount of what the investment was because of the growth. Your money grows. And again, I repeat, people are going to say, well, they're going to let them put it in the risky ventures. They say risky to invest money. No, it's not. It's much better rate of return than the Social Security trust today. And that's what's risky, is to leave the money in there and do nothing. That's what's risky, particularly for younger Americans. Karen Siegfried, thank you very much. Karen, here you are. Got a bunch of older folks here on the stage.
That's okay.
It's good. Give us your story.
Well, the reason he's so concerned about me is because he's my grandfather, so that he's got a little vested interest. But I recently got married this summer, and my husband and I have been hearing all about, by the time that we're nearing retirement age, there's not going to be any money left in Social Security for us. And we have been doing some investing on our own, not a whole lot, but a little bit to help counteract that. But if we could put part of our Social Security that is already taken out of our check, if we could go on and put that into a private account and invest that as well, that would be great. That would help us, and we could choose if we wanted to go in this account or this account, exactly which of the several funds we wanted to go into. And it would be ours. And if, hopefully it won't ever happen, but if something happened like happened to Beverly, then we would still have that money. That small amount would be ours.
Somebody told me one time they took a poll amongst 20-year-olders, and 20-year-old people said they thought it was more likely they'd see a UFO than get a social, because once people realize, once the seniors realize nothing's going to change, once Congress realizes there's a lot of grandfathers wondering about their granddaughters and their future, once 20-year-olders and 30-year-olders start to say, wait a minute, now there's a problem, what are you going to do about it? Those are the dynamics to get something done. I presume you expect Congress to get something done now before it's too late.
Yes, I do.
Well, listen, I want to thank our panelists for coming. I thought this was an interesting dialogue. Good job. I want to thank you all for giving us a chance to come apart about this important issue. I'm looking forward to working with Congress. I expect there to be a civil dialogue and honest debate. All ideas should be on the table. The American people are going to influence the outcome of this debate. I want to thank the good people of Memphis for letting me come by and visit with you about it. I want to assure you I will continue traveling our country, asking people to be involved, getting people to write their congressmen and senators to say, get rid of the partisanship, sit down at the table, and modernize this system for generations to come. God bless, and thanks for coming.